Welcome to the Christ Project Podcast. I'm Kentu Martin Coward, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is about awakening to love, peace, and abundance, and discovering the divine energy within each of us. Each week, we share insights to help you connect with your purpose, shift fear into love, and manifest a more meaningful life. Whether you're just starting or already on your spiritual path, there's something here for you. Let's explore how to live from a place of love and abundance together. This is the Christ Project Podcast. Let's get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Christ Project Podcast. I am your host, Kentu Martin Coward, and I'm so excited about our episode today when my dear friend, Wendy McNeil, she's also a fellow member of the UU Congregation Montclair with me, and we were friends both together when we were both Episcopalians, and we saw the light and became Unitarians, and we just have a great time together. And we had a number of meetings together, and I know the work that she does. And I'm just really excited about her coming on and sharing her message about why generosity matters, really. It's all about generosity and living in a place of generosity. So we're going to get started. I want to ask Wendy to introduce herself. She's a fierce advocate for social justice and for reparations and for really making the world a more loving and place for everyone to enjoy. So Wendy, I want to hear your story. I want to know how you became this fierce advocate for social justice and reparations, how you became a successful fundraiser working to help other companies like myself make money and do justice in the world. But before you get to the part of you today, I always like to hear about what people love to do when they were little boys and girls, back when they were growing up. Like for me, when I grew up in Southwest Georgia, and my favorite thing to do as a kid was to get on my bicycle and be free and run through the woods, drive and create adventures. And when I had my bicycle and I had my freedom, and I had so much freedom to run, I was the happiest little boy in the world. Tell us a little bit about you, Wendy, when you were a little girl, where you grew up, what you love to do, and then how that might have informed you and who you are today.
Yeah, so I grew up in Newark's Central Ward, also known as the Fourth Ward of Newark. And the first neighborhood, which I do not remember living in, but I'm told that's where I came, that's where they brought me home from the hospital, was the Ironbound section of Newark, which was then and still is now the immigrant section of the city. That's where the Portuguese live. It's one of the safest communities in Newark. And my father, who had a factory job, he worked for a Singer sewing factory in Newark, was also the superintendent of a tenement. And I vaguely remember this space because we didn't have a sink in the bathroom, so we had to use the sink. So it was like one of those old tenement buildings. And unfortunately, when I was about 5 or 6, it burned down. But just to tell you that I am the only member of my family that was born and baptized as a Roman Catholic, because my mother converted to Catholicism when my sister and brother were like 7, 8 years old. And my brother was the one who got her into, this little kid, or at least the myth goes that he was the one to get involved in Roman Catholicism, because he used to go and hide out at St. Aloysius Church in the Ironbound section. So a priest said to him, "Where's your parents?" So he brings in my mother, and en voila, she becomes this very devout Roman Catholic. So I grew up in a very, very devout Roman Catholic household. I was, and when I tell people this now, no one believes me, but I was a very shy child. I'm sort of like a forced extrovert because of the work that I ended up doing. And so I was a reader. And my parents recognized that. So they got me books. They subscribed me to magazines. So by the time I was in the 4th grade, I had a subscription to Look, Life, Time, and Newsweek magazines. And they kept those magazine subscriptions going through college. So I became a news addict really early in life. And my mother, and I would see both parents also reading newspapers. So they read the Newark Evening News, the Newark Star Ledger, and the Daily News. And on Saturday nights at about 10 o'clock, my mother would get me in the car and we would go to Newark Penn Station to pick up the Sunday New York Times. And so this is the type of household that I was raised in. My sister was the basketball coach for the Catholic Youth Organization basketball league in my parish, and I'm 5'9", so I was like, oh, perfect basketball player, but I absolutely hated it. And so despite having my sister being the coach, I wanted nothing to do with it. And what I wanted to do is to sit around and read. My mother, despite being raised in the Jim Crow South, had this love of theater and entertainment. So we went to shows in Newark, the Lowe's Theater in Newark. This is before NJ-PAC and so forth. So we had Newark Symphony Hall, we had the Lowe's Theater, the RKO Theater, where they would have live people come. So I saw little Stevie Wonder. I saw the Supremes. I saw the Three Stooges live. And then my mother branched out, and twice a year for the Christmas and Easter show, she would take us over and we would stand online to Radio City Music Hall. And as the income of my family increased, we started doing Broadway theater. So I can brag and say that I saw every Broadway show from Pearl Bailey's Hello Dolly to Zero Mostel's Fiddler on the Roof. So that was the type of family that I was brought up in. Not to say it didn't have its dysfunctions, because what family doesn't, but certainly I came from a family where people cared about books, they cared about education, even though they themselves, both of my parents, I never knew how much education they had.
Wow.
So, I don't know if they graduated from high school. Okay. And that's the secret that died with them, But the point of the matter is that they valued education. They were very street smart in making sure that their kids got the right education. For example, my mother lied in terms of our address so that my sister could go to the best high school, public high school, Lake High School, right? So there were things that they intuitively knew that would advance their kids. And there was never any doubt in my mind, nor in terms of the agenda of my parents, that I would go on to college. My sister got an associate's degree. That did not happen for my brother. He went into the Army. He had some difficulties along the line, but as a senior, he did go on. The state, he's in California, and he was able to get education for free as a senior citizen now through the state system in California.
That's
So
wonderful. We're never too late, right?
yeah. And then the other thing, so there was always books, there was theater, there was movies. We constantly went to movies. But the other thing is that I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. Again, intuitively, my parents knew this was the best scenario for their kid, right? And so I went to this all-girls Catholic academy. And while there, I got this vision that, the girl from the Fourth Ward of Newark, she traveled to Europe. And so because my mother was this devout Roman Catholic, I convinced her to go to Europe in order to see the Catholic sites. And she said, sure. And we ended up spending 21 days on this trip, traveling through 5 countries in Europe. And then when I got into college, I wanted to study in England. Again, what nerve, this girl who's living in Newark's Fourth Ward has this vision. And I'll never forget my mother telling me to go and tell my father that this was what I wanted to do, because he needed to give me some money. And I go and I tell him, and he then proceeds to tell me I don't need to go to England because he can tell me the story of his life in World War II. And my mother is in the kitchen, and she walks out of the kitchen and she says, and we always called my father Big Herb. She says, Big Herb, and she uses expletives, which I will not go into. Wendy doesn't give a X, Y, and Z about your time in World War II. This is now. She doesn't care about the past. Give her the money. This is what she needs. So I got a factory job to pay for it, but my parents gave me all the money that I needed for spare money. And not only that, but they gave me a set of Samsonite luggage. And I used that luggage through my 20s. So because of them, I was able to I had my love of books, theater, the arts, and also traveling.
It sounds like to me your upbringing helped you learn the truth in a world that appears to be lacking.
Yeah. Well,
on the outside world, with love in our hearts, we realize the truth is there is nothing lacking. We live in abundance.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing is that when I was growing up and certainly reading things.
I'll take this opportunity to give you a quick update on what is happening with the work we're doing to save the lives of LGBTQ Africans. Under the new White House administrative executive order, we are no longer accepting any kind of immigrant or refugee in the United States. So the work we were doing, we were working really closely with the UNHCR, both America, the United States, and Canada have been working closely with the UNHCR to resettle Africans largely from a refugee camp in the South Sudan. Well, they're not going to come into America. And the UNHCR said we put things on hold for 90 days, which we believe is a clear confirmation that they're just realigning and rerouting all of those people they were working with and who've been approved to come to America. They're rerouting them through Canada. So what I was giving people was an update on what's going on with our project in Africa, that they're not coming to America. So this is what's going to happen. They're going to be coming to Canada. We haven't gotten that confirmed yet, but most likely, I'm knowing players and their commitment to their mission, which is to safely resettle about 400 LGBTQ refugees from a refugee camp in the South Sudan to a safe place. And the two countries they were working with were America and Canada. And some of those people were going to Canada and some of those were coming to the United States. A lot of them were coming here because I'm here. But now with the new Trump administration policy on immigration, they're not coming here and they're not going to come here anytime soon. So we're waiting. It's on hold for 90 days. And we're waiting, and we feel pretty comfortable and pretty confident that the Canadian government will come through and they'll just be rerouting them through Canada instead of going through the United States. In light of that, it's given me the opportunity for me and my husband to pursue looking at moving our home down to Puerto Rico, because we both would love to live in Puerto Rico. And there's no reason for us to stay here because we're not going to be able to have any. We're keeping our house. It's a sort of a sacred place for our family to come from Africa, but that's not happening. So we might as well go somewhere we like to be, where it's warm and it's nice and live on a mountaintop as in the winter. And then we can go to Canada and live with our family and carry that mission on in Canada. But here's the thing. We need your help more than ever. We need financial support more than ever. And here we got one of the best fundraisers on the world here. She will tell you that when we practice generosity, we live in generosity. So I encourage you, please go to our website, www.diamondmineacademy.org. See the wonderful work we're doing. We haven't really updated it for all the changes yet, but you'll see an easy way to just click on the project, the Diamond Mine Project, and make a contribution to whatever size you can. I promise you. And Wendy will tell you, when you give from the heart, you begin to receive from the heart, and we begin to really live in a world of abundance and prosperity. So we'd love to have your support. Right. And I'm kind of glad you fell off the screen for a minute, Wendy, because you gave me a great opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's my connection that every so often the internet goes down where I live. So I really apologize for that. No. But anyway, I just want to get off of my autobiography by saying that I had the opportunity when I left the city of Newark to move to Princeton. And one of the things that happened while I was there in Princeton was I went into a white world and I saw how white people live, and how at that time I was in my early to mid 20s and stuff. And I have to say that one of the articles or covers of Look, the now defunct Look magazine, had on it was about the ghetto and how dysfunctional these communities were. And so then I moved to Princeton. So I think, I grew up in this dysfunctional space, and, these white people are now going to show me how to live. And then what I realized was that their lives were much more screwed up, and that young people who grew up in a more affluent, quieter situation than I did in the Fourth Ward of Newark were much more dysfunctional and effed up than I could ever be, or my family. So I just want to end with this part by just reading one of my favorite poems that became part of my life. And one of the reasons is my parents gave me her album when I was maybe 13, 14 years old for Christmas. And I played the album over and over and over again. And that's Nikki Giovanni. And on it was the poem Nikki Rosa. And the end of it says, I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand Black love is Black wealth. And they'll probably talk about how hard my childhood was and never understand that all the while I was quite happy. So if I tell people I'm from Newark, they go, oh, without realizing that, and I don't want to romanticize, but that there were many, many, many rich things about growing up in Newark that I couldn't have gotten in a nice little suburb.
Yeah, I can feel that. A lot of times when I grew up in Southwest Georgia, they wonder, well, how did you live down there? I said, well, actually, believe it or not, there's a lot of love in Southwest Georgia. There's a lot of love. And
right.
There's love everywhere you go. Anywhere you got humans, there's love. And it
Right.
probably in probably some of the areas where it's, at least I can see from my area, Africa, the love in Africa with my family there who live in some really horrible conditions is just deeper,
Mm-hmm.
thicker, warmer, more open than anything I've ever known. So I love that story. So I want to hear today about, I know that you're the co-chair of the League of Women Voters on Reparations Study Group. And so
Right.
tell us a little bit about what a reparations study group does. Why is it important? Why does it matter for the audience who's like, they're like shrugging their heads like, what are reparations? What does it matter? Why is Wendy so passionate about this?
Right. So first of all, I'm a fundraiser. And again, growing up Catholic, Roman Catholic, being educated by the Benedictines, it was all about social justice. All right. So the core of my being is about that. I had a mother who was out there protesting for, I can't think of the couple that was executed in the 50s because we said that they stole nuclear secrets, and she would often tell the story of going to a silent march. And my sister went to every civil rights march, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that I am involved in social justice, again, comes from not only my religious heritage of being taught by the Benedictines and coming out of that social justice part of the Roman Catholic Church, but also coming from a family, the Rosenbergs. They're putting up the Rosenbergs. That's right. My mother, if ever they came up, she would always say that woman didn't do what she did. She was innocent. She had no right to die. They should not have killed her. So this is the type of family that I came up with. I studied art history and history. Never in my wildest dreams, I didn't even know what a fundraiser was, but I got into it. And I show you this book, A Spirituality of Fundraising, by one of the great Roman Catholic theologians, Henry J.M. Nouwen. And he writes that fundraising is also always a call to conversion. And this call comes to both those who seek funds and those who have funds. And whether we are asking for money or giving money, we are drawn together by God, who is about to do a new thing through that collaboration. So, and then
I want to just hold on. That was amazing. You just sold me that book, Wendy. I am, as somebody who, as someone with a new 501, relatively new 501c3, learning how to raise money. That was a gift right there. Just hearing that statement, and I am definitely going to get that book and read it, because I think that that's exactly the spirit I need to be in as I'm beginning to try to raise money for this. These efforts that I have going on in Africa. Thank you for that.
Right. And there's another quote that he writes: "You won't become poorer. You will become richer by giving." And we can confidently declare with the Apostle Paul, "You will be enriched in every way for your great generosity." And then the final quote, and these are things that I live by, because fundraising is not easy, right? So you have to see it from my perspective as a ministry. And that's what I do. I do see it as a ministry. So my final quote is: "God's kingdom is the place of abundance, where every generous act overflows its original bounds and becomes part of the unbounded grace of God at work in the world." So that's just what I do. And I believe that we are in a state of abundance. We are not in a state of scarcity, and that there is enough to do good in this world.
Yeah,
And that's
your life's a living testament to that, isn't it?
well, but that's how I see it, and that when I get on a cause, I get on a cause, and so, and I came to reparations, and now we're going to talk about reparations. I came to it late. Now I knew about it. I knew about the hearings that. That Cory Booker and some senators had in Washington, because Cory Booker, who is our senator here in New Jersey, was also the senator who did the anti-lynching bill. So imagine, this country, we were like way into the 21st century before we federally banned lynching in this country. So Cory Booker, isn't that amazing, right?
Well,
Cory Booker.
Right now we have lynchings in Africa, so it's. I mean, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that when you're living under a mean, cruel dictator, that people don't get killed. There is genocide. It's a form of genocide, really. It's a form of genocide.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. And so. So then he, I guess, pivoted, and I don't know this for sure, I'm just assuming. He then pivoted to, okay, let's do reparations. So he had these hearings in Washington about reparations. Ta-Nehisi Coates spoke. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a very extensive article about reparations in Atlantic Monthly. So I knew all of those things, right? I knew all of those things, but I wasn't really paying attention to it, and I wasn't involved in the whole reparations movement. Then I go to Arizona. I discover right after COVID, I decide I'm going to travel. I'm working remotely. I can work any place. So I'm going now to the Southwest. And I go into Phoenix first. I go to the Heard Museum, and I hear this little video about some Native American tribes. And one of them starts talking about the monthly check that they received. And on my way, which is 2 hours from Phoenix to Sedona, where I was staying, I'm thinking, the check, that's reparations. So I then start looking up reparations and the history of reparations in this country. And we tend to give reparations for some horrible thing that the government may have done to a group of people. So, for example, all of the people who were interned during World War II, the Japanese people who were interned, got a $10,000 check. And that's comparable to over like $100,000 now. And so we did this. We did this with Native American tribes that we took their land away from. We did this to slave owners, right? In the South, after the slaves were freed. So God forbid we gave it to the slaves. We gave it to the former owners of the enslaved so that they could rebuild their lives. So this was something that was done, and I thought, okay, this is starting to make sense to me. And from learning more about it and learning about the atrocities that were done to my people and my ancestors, I decided to get involved with reparations. And I'll just give you two incidences that's very personal.
I just want to let you know we're at the 30-minute mark, but this is so interesting, Wendy. I want us to go, but I want to let the audience know we're gonna, with your permission, I want to hear this and I want to hear more about this. So let's give ourselves permission to go an extra 10 minutes. How does that sound to you?
Okay, yeah, if need so. So
let's go for it. This is very interesting. I think this is why it's our show. We can do what we want to.
Right. So, for example, my father served in World War II, and I heard about it all. In fact, I feel that one of the reasons I got so interested in history and became a history and art history major when I was at university as an undergraduate, and then just did art history in graduate school, was because of my father, who was constantly, my mother would say, oh, he lived in the past, but he constantly talked about his experience in World War II, and he actually did battle. So he was one of those he was part of a Black regiment that actually did battle in World War II. So the point of the matter is that he did not get full access to the GI Bill. So he is buried in a military cemetery. He requested that we pay, instead of putting him into the nice Roman Catholic cemetery that's right up Grove Street, which is where my mother is buried. My father insisted on being buried in a military cemetery because that is how much being in the Army meant to him. But yet, when he got out of the service, it was very, very, very difficult, almost nearly impossible for the Black soldiers, whether they were in the Tuskegee Airmen, right? And they were the heroes of our Air Force, or whether they were soldiers lying on the beach of Normandy, which is the situation of my father. They did not get access to the GI Bill. It was not outlawed to them, right? Because we do have laws that were race-based, but when they tried to get it, it was just simply denied to them. And if we think about that whole generation of white soldiers who got access to the GI Bill to go to college, to buy property, right? That gave them a leg up. And Black soldiers.
That was the whole purpose of the GI Bill.
Pardon?
Of course it did. That was the entire purpose of the GI Bill.
That's right. It gave them a foot up that was not allowed to happen to my father. And in fact, the Black GIs did not really start getting the GI Bill until the Vietnam War. And the reason for that was because a huge percentage of the soldiers in the Vietnam War were Black men, right? Because the white ones were going to Canada and going to college and getting, their bone spurs were getting out of going into the Army. And the people who did a lot of the fighting in the Vietnam War were men of color. And it was only... And my brother did volunteer 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. It was only thanks to Dr. Jill Biden and Michelle Obama that Black men got full access with no problems now to the GI Bill. But look at how long that took. Social Security. We just assume Social Security is given to everybody. When Franklin Roosevelt created Social Security in 1935, there were groups of employees who were not allowed to who didn't get Social Security. And one of that grouping were domestic workers. Well, guess who had a large percentage of domestic workers? It was Black people. And he did that in order to get the vote of Southern Democrats, right? So here you have up until the 50s with the first civil rights bill that Lyndon Johnson enacted. You don't have a large number of Black people getting Social Security. So that put us back. So I'm thinking of all of these things, and I'm thinking of my parents who wanted to buy a house and always looking at homes and being told it's under contract or it's been sold, or even us going to Cape May and trying to get a room in Cape May and having my mother come out back to the car crying because they've rented it. In those days, you couldn't Google somebody to figure out what race they are. And McNeil is like a name that could belong to anyone. And so when the people found out that the McNeils were a Black family, they just said, no, you can't rent here in Cape May. So all of those things just said there needs to be some repair. So that's on a personal level. And on a more global, in terms of the state of New Jersey, one, we did not sign on to the 13th Amendment until January of 1866. That's almost a year after the amendment went through. So a movie buff, if you look at the brilliant Spielberg film Lincoln, you will see when they go through the roll call, the state of New Jersey says no to the 13th Amendment. Okay, so we were late, and at the epicenter for the enslaved in the state of New Jersey was Bergen County. And the place that the slaves came in was Perth Amboy. So New Jersey has a very long history of segregation. As I said, when I was growing up, I could not vacation. My family could not vacation in Cape May. And that the housing situation in the state of New Jersey, in terms of redlining, in terms of just segregation. When I moved into Montclair, and I was the first professional Black person to work for the Montclair Art Museum. And I'm looking for an apartment. I'm commuting from Princeton to Montclair, and I'm looking for an apartment. I get on the phone with a realtor who is making assumptions about me. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know who I am. And she's on the phone and she's talking and she says, I can find you a place in Bloomfield in a nice white neighborhood. And I said, I don't want a place in a white neighborhood because guess what? I'm Black. And that shocked her, right?
Wow. I love that story.
This type of segregation was going on into the end of the 20th century.
Yes.
So, and when I got divorced and I was looking for a place, could not find, they wanted me to just stay in the 4th Ward, which was really expensive, quite frankly. And I wanted to look into other wards, I wanted to look into other places. No realtor would show me any other place until I took a white female friend with me to look for a place to live. Wow. And this was in 1999.
That's amazing.
So, and then I found a place in Upper Montclair on Northview Avenue. So in terms of, I just want to give this data, the wealth gap in New Jersey is atrocious. So there's 322,000 is the wealth that a white family would have versus 17 to 26,000 is the wealth that a Black family would have. The Black babies born in the state of New Jersey as of 2024 are 3 times more likely to die from birth to 1 year old than a white baby. Black maternal health rate, again, Black maternal mortality rate. Black women, 3 times more will die in childbirth than a white female would. So, and New Jersey has the 6th most segregated school districts in the country. And as I always say when I give that data out, that puts us up there with Mississippi and Arkansas. Okay. And
Wow.
I mean, this is the data in terms of this very blue state is, quite frankly, atrocious when it
Yeah.
comes down
So
to race.
let me just we're now we've gone over our 10 minutes. So what I want to do is I want to give you a chance to tell people what this is. I'm totally behind you. What would be the next step you could give our audience that they could do? Maybe it's whatever that would do to help you and support you in this movement.
Well, one thing that happened with me was I became a member of the League of Women Voters before COVID. I was out there registering voters, which I always enjoyed doing, and talking about one's right to vote. And so grew in the League of Women Voters so that I became an officer. So I'm on the board of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area now, and I'm the director, as they call it, of voter services. And so that meant I got to go to the convention, the annual convention that the statewide league has. And while there, to my surprise, and I didn't read the pre-package. I have a day job. Forgive me. I didn't know that reparations was going to come up as the League of Women Voters of the state of New Jersey would take it on as a study. And what that meant was that we would study, figure out why the state of New Jersey needs reparations. Then in the next convention, which takes place every 2 years, would then vote to accept it as an issue area. And that then means that the League of Women Voters can begin to advocate for reparations in the state of New Jersey.
So one of the best places for people to go is to you have a website, people can join the League of Women Voters in New Jersey?
Just do the League of Women Voters, and both men and women can join the League of Women.
That was my next question. I hear maybe y'all should get some advertising.
Yes, absolutely. Both men and women.
Let's get some advertising out there about that, because I was going to ask when I joined the League of Women Voters. Because
absolutely, you can join the League of Women Voters. And the other place to get involved and engage with is the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. And they have the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, because they have taken on what really should be the state of New Jersey's role in promoting reparations. And I'll talk about that. So what the League did, so we did this study on reparations. So my dear co-chair, Eileen Kahn, who is with the League of Women Voters of Fair Lawn, and I took on this task of being co-chairs of the study group. And we got 15 members of the League from all over the state to do this study. So at the beginning, it was educating the League about reparations. So we had like classroom type of situation where we had a professor emeritus to come and talk, Nell Irwin Painter, to talk about the legacy of slavery in the state of New Jersey. We had Professor Thomas from St. Peter's talk about the destruction of the middle class neighborhood of the wigwag section of Newark, thanks to government policies. We had John Pierre Brutus, who's with the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, talk about how reparations could be the very last phase of the decades-long civil rights movement. And we had Assemblywoman Sumter, who wrote the bill to establish a reparations task force in New Jersey. So And then we broke up into groups of the areas that we thought needed to be concentrated on, and that's criminal justice, healthcare, education, affordable housing, and there's a fifth part which unfortunately I can't think. Oh, the wealth gap. So those 5 areas, and our group, and I cannot even begin to thank them, went to task. They took this so seriously and investigated each area, why there was a need for reparations, and economics. So Eileen is putting up economics. Thank you, Eileen. Eileen Kahn, there, the co-chair of the Reparations Study Group for the League of Women Voters. So economics was one of them. And of course, I just gave the data about the tremendous wealth gap in the state of New Jersey, even in terms of salaries, so that you could have on the average a white person making over 100,000 and a black person making 65,000 for the same job. Okay, so we took it on. The study is there. You can access it by going to the League of Women Voters website and see the reparations study and read it. It gives a lot of information about why the state of New Jersey needs some form of reparations. And I just want to say it's not all about writing a check. And that's really important, because people get all bent out of shape if they feel that it's about writing a check. It's not just about writing a check. And some people will say you can't give. I mean, when I think about the loss, the economic loss that my family experiences, becomes, well, how much money are you going to give me and my siblings? Is that possible? But what I feel is really, really important about this topic of reparations is that we talk about it, and that we start seeing it as a way to repair for the injustices of the past.
And when we repair those things, we heal those things, right?
We repair and we heal.
Right.
And
well, I want to just say we've really gone over our normal time, which is fine, because I've had such a great conversation. We should have this is, but I don't want to turn this into an hour episode, because we're at 45 minutes. So okay. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today and hearing this conversation. I have certainly learned a lot. I'm definitely going to pick up that book on the spirit of giving by
Henry Nouwen.
And I'm going to pick that up today. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And Wendy, I want to give you the last words. When she speaks, we're going to say goodbye for now, and thank you for tuning in today. Wendy, give us a closing.
So what I want is for people to talk about reparations, to see the various ways that we can repair these injustices. And as Eileen says, there are already many laws in the state of New Jersey that are about reparations. And that is what we need to keep this conversation going.
Thank you. And I'll see everybody on the website at the League of Women Voters in New Jersey. Thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Christ Project podcast. I'm truly grateful for your time and presence. Your feedback means the world to us, so please let us know what you like, what we can improve, and most importantly, what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I'm excited to hear from you. And if you have a story to share about your experience of living in Christ consciousness, I'd love to hear it. You can email me directly with your story, and who knows, you might even join me as a guest on the podcast. Finally, remember that generosity is a key to unlocking the gate to living in Christ consciousness. When we give freely, we align ourselves with love and abundance. We kindly ask for your support in helping us continue the important work of the Diamond Mine Academy, an established 501c3 organization dedicated to empowering marginalized Africans, including LGBTQ individuals, by providing a safe and supportive environment where they can learn, grow, and achieve their full potential. You can make a real difference by contributing through our website, www.diamondmineacademy.org. That's www.diamondmineacademy.org. Every bit helps, and we are deeply grateful for your generosity. Thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, live with love, peace, and prosperity.